Good morning, everybody. Let's check out Mark chapter 8. And I think we made it down to the end, verses 34 to 38. When he had called the people to himself, with his disciples also, he said to them, "Whoever desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in glory, in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." So, there we go. Now, there's a lot in here. I mean, you could preach a sermon on a few of these verses. But Jesus says, "Whoever desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me." And so really you have, I think, three commands there. First is denying yourself. Good luck. That's the reality of it, though. It's that denying ourselves is a huge portion of our struggle. You know, we've got the world, the flesh, and the devil, right? And the flesh is the self. I mean, that's the us part in this factor. You know, and quite often, I think, really, you know, I actually just finished another book on spiritual warfare and demonology this morning. And, you know, rather than thinking of the world, our flesh, and the devil as three different things we fight, you know, in many ways, it's like the devil, demonic, you know, beings on the whole, right? He'll use the world and our flesh. And so he'll throw gas on those fires. He's the god of this age, the prince of the power of the air. I mean, so he's got the world, you know, on lockdown, really. And then our flesh, him and the demons are quick to use that. Maybe we won't cover this whole section today, but let's just start biting away at it and we'll see how far we get. You know, our flesh is there. Romans 7 may be a good cross-reference. You can underline, you know, deny himself, and maybe Romans 7 can be a little thing there, because Paul knew that there was things that he hated, but he found himself doing. Why is that? Well, it's because our flesh and our self, that there's these desires and these things. And now you can also tie that down then into verse 36, what profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Because our flesh, right, we have the lust of the eyes and the lust of the flesh itself and the pride of life, but all those really go into self. The lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. I would hate to get the flesh and get too narrowed down to the lust of the flesh, because there's the lust of the eyes and there's the pride of life. And again, it's all these things that wrap up together that make self. Lust of the flesh, you know, that's where we have desire that cries up from within. And in all honesty, Satan can use a whole slew of different things. I think sexual desire and temptation is the number one on that list, though. I think it's one that most people know can be used and abused by the enemy and ourselves. And it can be done in so many different ways. You can tempt people with you know, sexual desires that are just not of the Lord. And then you can tempt people to have sex outside of marriage, or even, I don't know if I can say even worse, but one that's just so forgotten. I loved it when I first heard someone put it this way. Satan will do all that he can to have Christians, or anyone really, desire sex before they're married. He'll do anything he can to get people to desire sex outside of marriage until they're married. And then he'll do whatever he can to stop holy and God-ordained sex within marriage. And so again, our flesh, whether he's turning you on or turning you off, there's that, but also addiction, that we give into physical addictions, and those addictions then drive us. And so this can be drugs, this can be alcohol, this can be cigarettes, it could even be eating, because people have eating disorders. And so this is that lust of the flesh. But then there's the lust of the eyes, right? And so when we look at the things we want, and there's stuff, and we see stuff, and we want stuff. Sometimes it ties in with the flesh, right? We see a person, that's the stuff we want. But the lust of the eyes, it's I want this, I want that, and there's all these things we want. And I think that really ties very much into verse 36. If he gains the whole world, because that's what we want. We want all the things we see. I mean, why do we even need money if it wasn't for the fact of all the stuff we want to buy? We want a better house. We want a better this. We want a nicer that. We want to have a nice looking lawn. We want to have a nice looking garden. We want to have a good car. We want to have and the list just goes on and on and on and on. And at the end of the day, we will sacrifice most of our life chasing stuff instead of the gospel. Because he talks about losing one's life for his sake and the gospel's. And so the lust of the eyes and the lust of the flesh, and then finally the pride of life. Because if it isn't the stuff we want to take in, it's what we want to send out. That message that we've got it all together, that we command respect from other individuals, that we want to be wanted, we desire to be desired, and we want people to look at us and have all these, wow, look at that person kind of a feeling. And the pride of life. We want power. We want prestige. We want appreciation. And sometimes those things take a lot of work. I mean, I can't deny, I follow myself subject to this. It's like, well, we want, now bear with me, right? Is there not a line between healthy and attractive? Because I think a lot of people probably have perfectly healthy bodies, but we're not skinny enough because we don't want to just be healthy. We want to be attractive. And even if we're already married and our spouse is just happy being married to us, we still want to be desired. Now, again, I'm an exercise enthusiast. That's a hobby of mine. And it's a healthy hobby, healthier than a lot of things, but still, you got to keep yourself in check. If you're able to get a workout in every day, but you can't get a Devo in every day, I'll just say it, you have a problem. If you can get a daily workout in and you can't spend that much time with the Lord, you have a problem. And I'm going to go on another limb here and just even put myself, into the judgment. If you can get more time, minutes spent in exercise every day than in time with the Lord, you have a priority issue. But what about all the other things we blow our time with? Once again, lust of the flesh. My flesh doesn't always just desire sex and drugs and rock and roll. Sometimes my flesh wants a back rub. My flesh just wants to relax, and it just wants to be massaged. But maybe that massage is amusement. Now, breaking down that word amusement, right? Put that aside, but muse, right? That's an inspiration. You think of a writer, a poet, they have a muse, and the idea in the Greek even was the idea of a muse was, one of the goddesses or someone they'd send down to inspire these. That's muse. It's actually to be intellectually inspired with creativity and thought. And when you put the alpha privative, the A in front of it, you now have a muse. No inspired thought, no creativity, no thinking, you're amused. We have entire parks dedicated to amusement. But more than that, I think that's more of a fun outing. But TV, Netflix, all that kind of stuff, even music, quite often, can just be something where you get lost away in amusement because your flesh just wants to check out. Now, rest is okay. And actually, giving your brain some rest is perfectly fine, right? Just like eating's okay. But obviously, that can turn into addiction and a problem. And the same thing goes with rest. It can turn into an addiction and a problem. And again, if we can find 2 to 3 hours a day to soak up a social media feed, but we can't set aside 1 hour to spend with the Lord, I don't know how much denying ourselves we're doing. We've really only covered deny myself. That's we read the whole thing. And we're tying in, verse 36 and verse 35 to help us understand this concept of denying ourselves. But really, denying ourselves. The lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. Battling against the flesh, the world, and the devil. I mean, this is this whole wrestling match we are in. And we're supposed to be conscious of that. Right? That we shouldn't be spending hours a day watching TV and spending hours, exercising and spending hours in all this. And then when someone talks about spending an hour in prayer, it's like mind-blowing to think. You mean do nothing but pray for an entire hour? It's like you do a whole lot of other stuff for an hour without batting an eye. I hear people joke, and it's just one of those things. Like sometimes it's like the way we look at things, like making it through an entire church service without going to the bathroom might be impossible, but making it through a movie at the movie theater, you can do that. You'd hate to miss a movie. And so Jesus says to deny yourself, and without denying yourself, I feel like there's no time or anything for anything else. But then it says to follow me, right? Take up his cross and follow me. Now this could easily become twice as long, but I'll try and keep the second half a little shorter. Take up his cross. So you see, we are commanded to do stuff. And I would say the average Christian, at least in America, the ones I'm more familiar with, they are extremely familiar with what we don't. And it's kind of like all the to-dos are just like the extra stuff that the really zealous Christians do. I'm really doing well as long as I don't. But if we put all the don'ts on the shelf, it's just like, well, those are givens. But what about all the do's? Taking up our cross and following after Jesus, that's great. You don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't chew, you don't hang around with girls that do. But what do we do when it comes to sharing the gospel? What do we do when it comes to actively serving in the church body and amongst our peers and being an active participant in what God is doing? A lot of times it's hard to serve because we don't want to deny ourselves. But that's the reality of it, is Jesus said, whoever desires to come after me. And maybe that's it. Maybe we just need a desire to come after Jesus a bit more. Because these are hard things. But he never said it was supposed to be easy. Because your flesh is really hungry and it wants to be fed by you, and it wants you to do what you want to do and to demand your rights and what's fair for you and what is acceptable. And again, it's like it's a lot of me, my, mo, moo, me. But he says, what profit is it to gain the whole world if you lose your soul? Now, we know we're saved by grace through faith, so we're not worried about working at salvation. But we see there's a root here, that those people who are losing their souls, it's because they are consumed with walking after their flesh and after the way of this world, again, this is like Ephesians 2, what we're going to be covering on Sunday. It's like, this is the thing. People they're dead and they're just following after their desires, and they're enslaved to their desires. They're slaves to sin. And so Jesus speaking, I think, in 38 with strong words, just if you're ashamed of him and his words in this world, well, I'm going to be ashamed of you one day. Now, I don't think verse 38 is saying you're going to be a perfect Christian and you're always going to do the right thing and you're always going to represent him the way you should and you're never going to stumble or hesitate. But in general, you can tell the people who have no interest in him and his words, and you can tell the people who do. And we know that there will be reward, according to 2 Corinthians 5:10 and other places. And we know that there's going to be tears in heaven because he's going to wipe them away. Why will there be tears shed there? That's a good question that you could kind of wonder about. If there may be a little bit of shame when heaven comes because what we could have done and how we could have lived. But again, he's just saying, follow after him. Follow after him and live like someone who's following after Jesus, who's not ashamed of his words, who is denying themselves and is seeking up after Jesus and is taking up your cross, right? I don't think we need to make taking up your cross to be anything super specific other than the simple things that he has commanded us to do. All right. Hope that gives you a nice cheery start to your morning. But it's real. And so, think about what you're going to spend your day doing today. Chasing after him, doing the things he's called you to, or doing the things you want to do. Live for Jesus. You won't regret it. All right, guys. Take care and have an amazing day.